Hi, this is Kate from Generate Magic, and recently Tim Grimes did a very good group discussion centered around SP, or otherwise known as specific person. So I thought I would do an SP video, which I've been actually avoiding for a long time, even though there's stuff I've been wanting to say on this topic, because there's so much stuff out there on YouTube, and just kind of in the wider manifestation community, and also because in my situation, like, it's a relatively new relationship, and so I haven't really felt super comfortable talking about it. But at the same time, I feel like I have something to share that could be of value to you, and so I wanted to share it. And of course, this goes for every video, but I think it's especially important to note with this video that this is my personal experience, and it's not some magic formula. And so I just want to share, what my experience has been. And so if you've noticed, kind of in this SP community, and in the comment sections of videos on SP topics, there tends to be a lot of comments showing a lot of kind of like emotional intensity, right? A lot of kind of emotional intensity, a lot of like desperation, a lot of obsessiveness, and I can very much empathize with all of that, because that used to very much be me. And I mean, I didn't know about all this SP stuff until relatively recently, but just in general, that I tended to be, I guess you could say I have had kind of a proclivity for obsessiveness, just in general, about any sort of goal. And like, I decide that I want something, and then all of a sudden I kind of attach all this stuff to it, and it's like it's almost kind of like, I guess I see my value in whatever it is, whatever this goal is, right? And it's like this iron grip, and it's like I have to have this or life will be over. And yeah, very much like this desperation energy, very much this my self-worth tied to it. And so, like, if I don't achieve this goal, then it means that I'm worthless. And then, of course, when it comes to relationships, there's already a lot of emotion. It can already be a very emotionally charged situation, right? And so, so I can very much kind of relate to all of the emotions kind of expressed in these comments. And full disclosure, I actually kind of went through a period in my life where I was actually talking to psychics and getting tarot readings just about every day, because I was in kind of the state of like desperation, and I didn't trust my own internal guidance, my own authority. I wanted somebody else to give me that reassurance, and just so I could feel calm for the rest of the day. And it was I recognized after a while that it was very much a clutch. And so so I got to a point, I would say a little over a year ago, and I don't want to go into the story. The story's not really important, but I had very much hit a low, and I was just feeling hopeless. I felt like the universe had let me down, like the rug had just been pulled out from under me. And then when I started to kind of gain my senses back, I realized that this kind of obsessing about this particular situation, and this obsessiveness in general, it just wasn't helping me. It wasn't putting me in a good place. It wasn't doing me any favors. And as you can probably guess from the topic of this video, the situation, it did involve another person. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to set this situation aside. I'm not going to feel the need to think about it. I'm not going to feel the need to act on it. I'm not going to feel like I need to do anything about it at all. I'm just going to leave it alone, to let it be. And so instead, I found a new goal to become obsessed about, which is a whole nother story. But at least that one, I was no longer spiraling about or feeling these intense emotions over. And so there was gradually, this person started to kind of reach out to me, and and I kind of wanted, this situation to continue. And, or rather, I realized that I did want a relationship with this person, but I didn't really want to go about it the same way that I had before. And so, yeah, so I was curious. And so I watched a few of those, those videos on SPs and the different processes and affirmations. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do some of those techniques. But I found even when I tried to do them, there was a lot of resistance. And I found that my thoughts around lack, my thoughts of anger, resentment, bitterness, this feeling of like self-righteousness, this desire to get an apology, all of these feelings were stronger than any loving feelings. And and as you probably know, obviously this is a very general statement, but in general, like non-loving feelings are not going to get you very far. In fact, they'll probably get you the opposite of what you want. And so, so I just kind of, when I was really being honest with myself, I realized that I was telling myself, oh, I'm in the wish fulfilled or whatever, but I really wasn't. I was in a very non-loving place. And and just kind of in this place where I realize it's kind of a cliche, but this whole thing of, oh, is your desire to for love, what's stronger, basically, right? Your desire for love or your desire to be right? And definitely my desire to be right, my desire to play the victim, all of this was stronger than the desire for love. So again, I realized, okay, it's time. It's time to step away from this again, and it's time, to step away from all of these processes. And I even realized that, like with my phone, like if it would get to be, like a long time, like say like a week or so, and I hadn't heard from him, then every time my phone would go off, and would it be him, it would kind of get me into the state of lack again. And so real simple, I just turned off the notifications on my phone. And I know that sounds very like, just simple, I guess. So simple it sounds almost stupid, but that was exactly what I needed to do in this particular situation, because it just got me kind of out of that sort of bad feeling state of like lack and frustration. And and it just got me into a state where I was completely focused on other things, on my other goals, and just enjoying my life. And then I remember this process that I had done and I had gotten good results with for other things. So for instance, my relationship with my mom. And so I didn't invent this. I got it from Brandy Gilmore, but it's a process called the 180 shift. And so basically what you do is I've talked about it before, but I'll summarize it again. So you take a statement, like a negative belief that you have about another person. And so in this case, about this particular individual, it was that he doesn't commit. And that was the belief that I had. And then you find evidence, like actual real life evidence, that shows you the opposite. So it's kind of like you're a lawyer and you're making the case for the opposite. And so I was able to actually think of a lot of cases that kind of disproved this belief that I had, that was able to kind of show up opposite evidence. And immediately I just kind of got a better energy when I did this exercise. And it's funny too, because I somehow I knew that it was going to work, but I had a lot of resistance towards doing it because I wanted to be right, essentially. I was very just kind of caught up in this sort of like self-righteousness. But immediately when I did it, I felt better. And then this feeling came over me, and I also just kind of want to emphasize that in my situation, this individual, he's very much a wonderful person. And so it's not like an abusive jerk, that we're dealing with here. I just want to say I had another partner in the past where I want to emphasize that he wasn't physically abusive, but he was a very difficult person to be with. And And I tried to do kind of a lot of, back then I was really into Abraham Hicks, so I tried to do a lot of her processes and one of her meditations on relationships. But at a certain point, I just realized, like, is this really worth my creative energy? And so, yeah, if you're in kind of a situation where it seems with another person, where this person is really just being a jerk to you, or you feel like the bad just really like outweighs the good, or you try to do that exercise, the 180 shift exercise that I just mentioned, and yeah, and you feel like you can't think of anything good, then you kind of maybe, and no judgment here, I've definitely kind of been in this situation, right, where you just want to kind of make something work no matter what. But you might want to ask yourself, well, why are you so determined? Like, why are you putting all your creative energy into this? And when there's so many other people, out there who would be, appreciative of the love, that you have to give. And yeah, so anyway, as soon as I did this exercise, I just felt this calm wash over me, and very much the sense of it is done. And it's funny because we say these things, right? We say these things like it is done, but we don't always feel it, right? It's almost kind of like we're trying to convince ourselves of something, but we don't really believe it. And I do this too. Like, I'll say it is done, but I better do another affirmation round or another scripting exercise just in case, just to hit it from all angles, right? But in this case, it was genuine. It was like a feeling that I experienced viscerally of it being done. Like, there was nothing more that I had to do. It was just this calm that washed over me. And after that, it was just like, I was just imperturbable. And, people would say things like my mom would, make these little comments like, oh, it must not be true love. But I didn't even care. Like, nothing shook me, which is kind of how I knew that I had reached the state, right, of like in complete imperturbability. And so I am, with this person now. But the larger point that I want to make, or at least in my mind, is I think the deeper thing out of all of this, right, is getting to this point of imperturbability, right, and getting out of that like obsessive mindset, right, and getting out of that mindset where it's just like, oh, I have to have this or life will be over, right, and just kind of realizing it's all good, right, and no matter what, it's going to be okay, and no matter what happens. And when I look back on my life and I look back on relationships, that didn't work out, just kind of recognizing, that it was for the best in the long run. And yeah, any sort of like business goal that or any sort of goal that you're pursuing, right? Just realizing, there's always like a bigger picture, right? And no matter what, everything is always working out for you. So that's one lesson. And yeah, and then the other lesson, or the other, I guess, takeaway from this is just kind of getting out of that place of self-righteousness, right? This place of wanting to play the victim, of wanting to be right. And this doesn't just apply for romantic relationships. It applies for all relationships, right? Because I realized with my parents, and particularly, with my mom, this was very much the case where I wanted to play the victim. I wanted to kind of keep replaying episodes, from my childhood and kind of blaming my parents for all my quote unquote issues and insecurities, and just kind of finally getting to a place where I realized, that doesn't really feel very good. Like, it might be kind of a moment of like temporary victory, right? Where you're like, oh, I got you, or I showed you. But it's not, when you feel kind of deep into it, it's not a very good feeling, right? It's not a very fulfilling feeling. And yeah, just feeling kind of peace and joy and love. And those are the feelings, that are much, once you kind of experience them on a consistent basis, you realize that you can completely let go of those old feelings, right, of victimhood and self-righteousness and wanting to be right, that it's really not worth it. And if somebody truly does something, terrible to you, then you know, you don't have to let that person back into your life, but by the same token, you know, you can just choose to completely walk away from it, both physically and mentally as well, right? You don't have to keep reliving the situation over and over again in your mind, right? Because that's not helping anybody. That's not doing any good. And once you let go of it, it really kind of frees up your creative energy to really do what you're meant to do. So anyway, that was a very much, as you can see, kind of an unconventional SP video, but I just wanted to offer this advice just in the case that it helps you. So thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.